Welcome to episode 9, part 2 of Heavenly Threads of Heritage. I'm your host, Jada Dixon. And as always, I'm thrilled to invite you to join us for a very special discussion. A discussion that we started on March 27th, when we were taking a deep dive into community outreach and social justice as Black women, along with some of the power dynamics at play and how we find balance, if there is truly such a thing, with Glenda Jenkins. Tonight, we'll continue that conversation with Pam Buncum, a game changer, organizer, and social justice advocate looking to get into some good trouble. Join us again as we uncover the stories of courage, resilience, and unwavering dedication to uplifting families. Just make a note that we're going to go over the same takeaways and call to actions just to keep your mind in the right flow and processes and all of those wonderful things. They really hit the core, and they've been some takeaways that I've shared on other episodes that are still apparent and important for this one. So stay tuned as we embark on a journey through the intersection of faith, activism, and community building with Pam Buncum. So listen, this is the segment where you generally receive your inspirational quotes and your Black Christian woman spotlights. But we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to walk in my executive privilege and I want to spotlight my hometown, a particular beach that I spent many of Sundays, many of summers enjoying the water, enjoying my people. And it is in a city called Fernandina Beach, Florida. You may also know it as Amelia Island, Florida. Same place. We'll go through the nuances of that a little bit later. But I wanted to give you some insight. I wanted to bring some things to the forefront as we begin to, weave those heavenly threads of heritage for this podcast. I want us to start thinking about our communities, our land ownership, our abilities to show up as it relates to community outreach and social justice. And so that includes fighting for what was and should still be ours. It's showing that even when we didn't have the space because of the color of our skin, we created it and it was thriving and flourishing. And it was a wonderful thing to see. And it's unfortunate that it is not the place that I once remembered. So go with me, flow with me, gain the knowledge that I have and I'm willing to share. American Beach in Amelia Island, Florida, stands as a testament to African American resilience, cultural heritage, and the ongoing struggle for racial equality and environmental conservation. Established in 1935 by Abraham Lincoln Lewis, Florida's first African American millionaire, American Beach served as a sanctuary for African Americans during an era of pervasive segregation, embodying the aspirations and achievements of the African American community. The legacy of American Beach is further enriched by the profound contributions of Maveen Betch, known affectionately as the Beach Lady, and her sister, Jonetta Betch Cole. And I want to pause there for a second. What is the significance? Maveen, she was an environmentalist who changed the game for American Beach. She made sure that it became an historical site, that the dunes that are in that area are not disturbed. Matter of fact, that is where her body rests. And then we think about Sister Cole. Some of you know, and if not, she was a past president of Spelman College. She is now working with the Smithsonian, let me say it that way, in the African American history area. So these are women who have been engaged in the community and gone off in their respective places and did what needed to be done for the people. So, how does that connect with American Beach outside of their commitment to the beach? Well, I'm glad you asked. Remember, I mentioned Abraham Lincoln Lewis. That was their great grandfather. Both women played pivotal roles in championing the cultural and historical significance of American Beach, albeit different arenas. Maveen, with her distinctive 7-foot hair and indomitable spirit, dedicated her life to preserving the environmental and historical integrity of American Beach. Her efforts were instrumental in garnering national attention for the beach's conservation, leading to its designation on the National Register of Historic Places in 2002. I might add, the beach lady, as the students of the local high school there re- would often see her on our campus for her to give us the knowledge and the understanding, and her fervent commitment to the environment was present from her long flowing lock that she had in a netted bag, and then her nails that were almost, if not equally, as long. But she was true in who she was. Johnetta Betch Cole, an acclaimed anthropologist and an academic, continued her family's legacy through her own contributions to African American history and culture. Her leadership in educational institutions and advocacy for social justice further highlighted the importance of American Beach as a symbol of African American heritage and perseverance. The American Beach Museum plays a crucial role in preserving the rich history of this area. Named after A.L. Lewis, the museum not only celebrates his visionary founding of American Beach, but also honors the legacy of Maveen Betch and the broader African American community's effort to maintain this historic site. Through exhibits and educational programs, the museum ensures that the story of American Beach, its founders, and its protectors continue to inspire future generations. The Evans Rendezvous, one of the flourishing entertainment venues on American Beach, hosted some of the era's most renowned African American musicians, served as a vibrant social hub. Though no longer in operation, the memory of the Evans Rendezvous underscores the beach's significance as a cultural and recreational cornerstone for the African American community. I would add to that, that is how my parents met. My mother was from Central Florida and would travel up on the summers where she and her cousins would, as they put it, shuck shrimp and whatever else seafood that was to be shucked. And she ended up at Evans Rendezvous, and the rest is here's history. And, my siblings and I are here. So there's a strong connection for my family to the American Beach. But as I uh, get older, I'm now realizing the significance of the beach, not just the meeting of my parents, but what that beach meant for the community. That was the first Black beach in the state of Florida, and I would dare say abroad. So the ongoing story of American Beach is also a narrative about land ownership and cultural preservation. In the face of development pressures, the community around American Beach has fought to maintain control over their historical land, emphasizing the importance of heritage and environmental stewardship over commercial interests. This struggle highlights the broader challenges faced by African American communities across the nation, striving to preserve their cultural landmarks and legacies against the tide of gentrification and erasure. American Beach remains a living symbol of African American history, culture, and resistance. Its preservation is a testament to the efforts of individuals like Maveen Betch and Jonetta Betch Cole, as well as the broader community's commitment to protecting this invaluable piece of American heritage. As visitors walk the sands of American Beach, they tread upon ground hallowed by generations of struggle, celebration, and unwavering determination to uphold the dignity and the rights of African Americans. So hopefully you see why I chose to spotlight a location, not only that is near and dear to my heart, but I believe that is a part of American history, but in particular African American history, because it highlights what we are able to do and continue to do because the fight is not over with American Beach and land ownership and the preservation of the culture, but it is all across the United States that we really need to start focusing in on those things that were once a part of our legacy, but then also keep that in context with the elections that are coming in November. And I'll leave that there. But coming up after this break, we will continue our conversation about community outreach, continue our conversation about social justice, and how our particular roles, as we are uniquely and wonderfully made, amen, can aid in that process. Whether you are in front or behind the scenes, you matter. Your activism matters. Your outreach matters. So let the conversation continue. After this break, we will bring in our sister, Pam Buncum. Welcome back. We have a returning guest that is Mrs. Pamela McCorkle Buncum, but she wants us to call her Pam. I remember that from last time. Pam.
Right.
She was on the second episode of Heavenly Threads of Heritage podcast, where she shared some awesome testimonies of faith and resilience, in particular, the testimony of her grandmother. And when I tell you, I had a lot of women come to me and share how that testimony had blessed them. It gave them memories of their grandmother, as well as their hopes for the future generations to come to have that type of connection in their family. So even if they didn't have it, they have taken a part of your grandmother along with them. It really warmed their heart. So we're super happy that you said yes again, that you are here and willing, but from a different topic, but it's still rooted in who you are, I believe, who you are. And that is an advocate for the community, an advocate for social justice. You are heavy in the political realm, especially in the Democratic Party. And with this huge election that is coming
Mm.
up, I'm sure that you are already hitting the ground running and skipping and flipping and everything else, trying to get something in order. But before we go into the topic for tonight, I want to remind everyone who you are.
Okay.
Pam uses her time to volunteer for various community, civic, education, and political organizations. Pam is a graduate of North Carolina A&T State University with a Bachelor's of Science degree in accounting. Pam and her husband, Kelvin, have two sons, a daughter-in-law, and two grandchildren. And I chuckled a little bit because, in the HBCU world, we say the North Carolina
The right, right, right. Wherever you
A&T.
graduated from is the
The.
and A&T we added the illustrious. We add
Oh, see, you gotta love the
you
HBCU
gotta
vibe.
and we love them all. Thank God for them. Yeah.
Right. It's the whole
Mm-hmm.
speech. You just can't say your university. You gotta
No,
go with everything. I won't even go into
everything.
them, but I had to pull myself back from saying the North Carolina A&T. So let's get started with our conversation
Okay.
by way of your introduction and reading your bio. Um, you're into the community.
Yes.
So it's only fitting that you will be a part of this episode, which is centered around community outreach and social justice.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a guest last week, Sister Glenda Jenkins, and she
Oh, love her.
spoke. Yes, yes. We spoke about the different aspects of community that she is involved with, that go to bat for advocacy for different communities, in particular the Gullah Geechee Nation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and even the perspective of being a woman in the midst of all of that,
Mm.
a patriarchal system. So she went deep. She went,
Good.
and so we had that conversation as to how do we balance, or can we balance, mom, sister, auntie, wife,
Mm.
church, all of those things, and yet and still do things in the community. So we had that conversation, and we can definitely talk about it here. This is part two of this particular theme for the podcast. But I also want to pick your brain, and you can start wherever you may. I'm gonna hush and let you get started.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I want to ask this question as we are going into a huge election coming up. What are some of the things from an organizational perspective that we need to be aware of when we think about community outreach and social justice?
Thanks again, Jada, for inviting me to do this. I appreciate it so much because, as you said, this is a very important time in the history of this country. And I was just talking to someone the other day saying we are all so very busy. The way you described me skipping and flipping and doing, I had to chuckle because you described my day today, bouncing around from call to meetings to Zooms to, and it's been like that for the last few weeks. But if
Mm,
this is not the time for us to just roll up our sleeves, say that we'll sleep, after November 5th,
right.
but, get quality sleep. If this is not the time for all voices, because that's exactly what's at stake right now, our voice,
Mm-hmm.
our freedoms, our right to choose
Mm-hmm.
um, who we are, where we live, how we learn, how our children learn,
Yes.
what we read, quite frankly, just basic freedoms
Mm-hmm.
about our own health choices. If this is not the time for us to get involved, I don't know what will what it will look like to galvanize the masses.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I just wherever I've lived, I just jump right in with my experiences and my skill sets and find out where I fit best to help, because really at the core of who I am, I'm really a worker bee. I mean, I've
Mhm.
been thrust into leadership roles, but I like to really get in deep in the trenches and to do the work. That's where I
Right.
find the joy. And, you know, grassroots work, community type activism, pounding the pavement, doing those kinds of things, um, talking to people. So right now, that's what we're doing. We're trying through various organizations right here in Nassau County. We're on the ground trying to get people mobilized, educated. I have several things on the drawing board with various groups, community groups,
Mhm.
organizations, political, that I'm involved in, and we're planning right now. Some of this we're a little behind schedule because we've had changeover in leadership in some of the organizations, and maybe all of them are, didn't do everything in a timely manner. So we're trying to play catch up. What is it that they say? You're trying to change the tire on a bus or a car while it's already in motion.
Mm.
So we're doing a little bit of that kind of
Okay.
thing. But letting people know about deadlines, letting them know what's at stake right now for our local government, state, and national. What's
Mhm.
at stake for uh, political candidates. If you vote this way, this is what they're saying, encouraging
Mhm.
them to go to get on websites and read
Yes.
what folks are saying. Almost all of them have a statement or a platform or something that's out there that they'll tell you. And most people are bold, good or bad. They'll tell you what they're planning to do and what they want to do.
Yes.
So that's what we're doing right now. And that has kept me seriously busy, because still being relatively new and my first election cycle, because I just want to remind you, up until 2022, I was still registered as a voter, even though I was living back and forth between Georgia and Florida. I was
Mhm.
still registered to vote in Georgia,
Mm,
and
okay.
purposely, because I was working on
Oh,
campaigns and things
yes.
there. So
Mhm.
I didn't switch everything over until February of last year, to be registered to vote and get ready for this general election. So this is my first election cycle here in Florida.
Wonderful. I love everything that you said, but one thing in particular, it is getting the word out and helping those to understand that we can't wait until November to say,
Mm-mm.
okay, now I'm going to look at the candidates. Now I'm going to, kind of rationalize which direction I'm going to go. It's important for us to, my dad, military brat, army brat, he would say that if you're on time, you're late. If
I
you're
love
early,
that.
you're on time. And
Mm-hmm.
so getting the word out there quicker and sooner is important because that's how you gain understanding. That's how you gain knowledge, and you're able to make a clear vote for the candidate
Mm-hmm.
that you choose. And so I'm a little seasoned. I'm not real seasoned. I'm a little seasoned. But I remember when I first started voting, I was like, well, who you voting for?
Mm-hmm.
That I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna vote for that person. But then as they got in office, I was like, I don't know about that person. So it's good that
Right.
you are getting the groups together, regardless of how long you have been here. You've taken on that charge to say, no, we need to come together as a group
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and push the narrative that is going to be beneficial to the community and not just one particular percentage of a community. And so I want to just highlight Pastor Ben. The last few weeks, we've been doing what he calls the Real American Virtual Revival, because there are a lot of evangelicals and even some candidates evangelical preachers, as well as members who are uh, trying to say that the word said that they have been given permission to act the way that they act, to
Oh my
say
gosh,
that,
yes.
yes, to say that Black people are not Christian. It's just the whole narrative. So he's taking his political journalism, activism, knowledge and coupling it with the Bible and going
Perfect.
word by word, scripture by scripture, and showing that what they're putting forth is not true. And it's
Mm-hmm.
twisting the word. And so when you said worker bee, I'm that worker bee behind the stage, behind the
Mm-hmm.
scene, doing those things. And so it's going to take the collective. It's going to
Thank
take
you.
a collective to do it. And so we have to think about it in that regard versus there are, we got the sneakers out, we got the AI images out from our friend.
And now the Bible
Yeah, and now the Bible. And so
during
I'm
Holy Week. I
like,
mean, that just blew me off out of my shoes. I was just like, okay. I mean,
we,
is there no bottom
at
to
all.
this man's lack of integrity? I mean, anyway, that's a whole nother podcast, Jada.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
Yeah.
so, it's important for us to not be asleep at the wheel. We have to get
Right.
there. We have to be the change and not be the parking lot ministry that I like to call. It,
Hmm.
you
I
have your
love
meetings
that.
and they go out to the parking lot and talk about, well, they should have did this or they should have did that.
Hmm.
No, bring that
But
on the inside.
but is that not who we are as Black women and women of color, but particularly Black women
Mm-hmm.
in our churches, in our communities, in our households?
Mm-hmm.
That is why I loved this billboard in Atlanta that went up after the 2020 election. In 2021, it said, "You're welcome, America." Dot Black women.
Oh, I gotta find that.
Because yeah, yes. And I thought it gave me chills when I saw it. I chuckled. And then just for no reason, well, it wasn't for no reason, because I, was part of all of that pandemic rush to do
Mm,
how we all galvanized like that in Georgia to do it. But then I started crying because I remembered, what it took. And it is not easy. And for people that are seasoned in this thing, and I still consider myself a relative newbie because I didn't
mm-hmm.
really get involved at the extent that I work until 2017 when I jumped on
Okay.
Stacey Abrams' campaign and worked her first run at governor. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was just really and truly involved. I wanted to see that happen. I really wanted that to come to pass. But at any rate, that's who mobilized our children, our families, our
Yes.
family members, our husbands at
Yes.
times, or significant others. We were
Mm-hmm.
the ones saying, "You got to do this. You've got to get out." And
Absolutely.
I just told somebody the other day the fact that so many young people took that to heart. I mean, of course, the George Floyd murder mobilized quite a few of them to do something that year during the 2020 general election. But it made a point to those young people, some of them voting for the first time, that if I vote in large numbers, I could make a difference. And
Right.
so when we flipped Georgia, I was looking at that because I poll watched and I saw those young people filing in their voting, and
Mm,
the difference, it was by a slim margin, but it was enough
right.
to make the difference. And they
Right.
needed to see that. It
Right.
was a win for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because we were in the Atlanta area during that time and being engaged and doing various things to kind of get the word out there, the importance to vote. And you're right, the numbers, the trickery, the
Mm-hmm.
tomfoolery
Mm-hmm.
that was happening, it shows that, well, it shows a couple of things. It shows that they will go to no end
Mm-mm.
to do what they do because at that time the gentleman that was running against her was also in the position. What was his
Thank
title?
you. He was Secretary of State. He
Yes,
was Secretary of State, had already purged so many names on the roll, and
right,
he would not step down. It was another state where the person was running for governor or either whatever. I think he was running for governor as well, and he never stepped down from his
right,
position. And that's where everything funnels through the Secretary of State's office,
right,
anything to do with voting. And
right.
why that's not, a lack of separation of duties or a conflict, I
Right.
don't know what is.
Yeah, and that's just like separate titles or separate positions. That's the same thing with Florida when you think about our current governor and then running
Mm-hmm.
for the United
Right.
States of America. There is no checks and balances. You, especially if you know that you're going around and you know in a certain amount of time when you have to start canvassing and putting out your information. So at that point, I don't know, the law, something needs to change to where if somebody has an intent to run, there has to be a certain distance between their ability. But then they probably would have planned ahead of time. There's always that catch. There's that loop of someone in that position. But all that aside, I remember that election. I was there. We always go as a family. Everybody
That's
gets a
wonderful.
sticker. Yeah, yeah, everybody gets a
Mm-hmm.
sticker. They get excited. They ask questions. So it's a whole family event for us.
That's
And,
great.
being a part of that and just seeing, like you said, even if she did not win, she made a huge impact for Black and Brown people. In particular, her charge to, lack of better words, change the state from
Well,
where.
that first run, and when she ran in 2018, and
Mhm.
everything she did on the ground leading up to that election, she laid the groundwork, beating the pavement and going to
Yes,
these rural counties that
yes,
everybody had neglected prior
yes.
to that, getting folks registered to vote. She laid the groundwork for that flipping of Georgia in
Mhm,
2020. That was
mhm.
her machine
Yeah,
working, and other groups that filed in there. And that was what warmed my heart too. It wasn't just her group, Fair Fight, or whatever, that mobilized after that to keep things going. You had Black voters. What's the lady's name? Something Brown. Oh wow, I can't even think of her name, but Black Voters Matter. I think is the
oh,
name of her group,
yes.
and another group out of Atlanta area as well, and others, sororities, fraternities,
Mhm,
all
mhm.
tried to get on board because
Right.
they saw the importance of doing that to
Absolutely.
prepare. Hmm.
Exactly, absolutely. And it's funny that you say that because I'm a newbie. I'm like a real newbie, like maybe a year or two. So, I'm learning as well. And so I just attended a webinar with the uh the Black Matter, because it's her and a gentleman, right? That they're
Hmm.
co-founders.
Hmm.
They had a kind of a fireside chat and chew with Joanne Reed.
Oh
And
yes.
so they're getting the information out just as you are getting the information out, um, going, combating the myths that are being put out there about different narratives, shall I say, that are gaining traction. And so it was kind of cool to just watch and see in the element. I didn't say anything, but it was just cool to see watch them in their element and kind of cultivate and motivate the people to get out there and vote. So as we think about, community outreach and social justice and this election that is coming up, what are some of the words of encouragement for the future generation? Because what I've seen, especially now having kids who are into YouTube and you see everything on YouTube, there are some YouTube influencers making it cool to not go vote, to
Oh,
not,
absolutely.
so what would you tell them in that regards?
This is their, some of them are so young that even their grandparents didn't grow up in during the civil rights movement. So they are
Mm-hmm.
so removed from
Mm-hmm.
what we could not do. And I'm dating myself, but I was all right on the hairy edge of it. But there was enough, because I grew up in the South, there was enough of vestiges still hanging around
Right.
that
Mm-hmm.
I experienced in my educational experience in my
Mm-hmm.
rural town in North Carolina. These young people are so far removed
That is true.
that they have no clue what
Mm-hmm.
it would be like if
Right.
these folks hold true to what they are telling us from their own mouths.
Right.
This man has said that he would be dictator for the first day. You think it's going to be for the first day and then that's it? He is power hungry and
Oh, absolutely.
crazed.
Yes.
So a little taste of that, it would be for
Yes.
the duration.
Right.
We what I ask my own family members when I let them get on their high horse and I let them go, and then I'll ask them, if you if this were your civil rights movement, because many
Mm,
of them have said, if this was your era, if this is your era as a civil rights movement, and you probably said reading things, ain't no way I would take that. I would have done
mhm,
this, that, and the other.
mhm.
What would you, how would you envision your role?
Right.
What would you have done back in
Mhm.
the day when all this, uh, segregation and
Right.
depression, because they wanted to keep us down, and just flat out Jim Crow, because the laws were in the book. See,
Mm,
that's what they don't understand.
right.
These were laws, and any Black person that tried to fight against that, they were considered law breakers and thrown
Right.
in jail or worse.
Mhm.
So this is what we're going to. These would things would become the law of the land.
Mm,
And now you got to fight to change the law. So what would you do, or what would you have done had
mm.
you lived in that area, in that era? And if you're not doing something similar to that right now,
Right.
then you need a wake up call, because we are in. How do you think it happened? It didn't happen overnight. It
Right.
gradually grew into what we knew to be, because people don't realize some part of history, we had Black folks in government that were being elected, that were
Right.
coming along, and
Mhm.
things, were looked like it was changing, until they said, oh, wait a minute, this is too many Black folks having
Right.
rights. Now
Right.
we got to switch this thing. Oh, they've got their own business district down here making money and living large. No, we've got to go, bomb it and burn it. And,
Right.
I mean, that's what they did out there in Oklahoma. They did that.
Mhm.
Black Wall Street.
Mhm.
And Black people
Mhm.
were providing and doing for themselves. Somebody reminded me
That
of
bothering people.
yeah. So, I mean, that's what I would start there. Whatever you say you would have done back then, that's what you should be doing right now.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you highlighted the fact that the generations today, and even some of even my generation, they're kind of like, well, that's over, I'm good, I can
Mm-mm,
work here, I can go to this,
mm-mm.
I can do that. And one of the things that I stress with the kids, with we have them in a bubble, we recognize that and realize that by homeschooling, and they're homeschooling with other Black and brown kids in their co-op, that they're in a bubble. But we have those
Mm-hmm.
age appropriate conversations with them, and we make sure that they're taking Black history, and it's they're in that space. My older one in particular is in that space of learning about Jim Crow laws, and
Mm-hmm.
how sometimes just because he's taller than me
Oh,
and
is he?
13.
Oh my goodness, Jada.
So having those realistic conversations and telling him what to do and what not to do, as well as preparing him for how society will see him, is very important to us. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and when you start mentioning those different cities that were Black owned, that was thriving in their community, it brings to mind uh, Lake Lanier,
Yes.
Oscarville.
Yep.
So I just saw something on social media that they're planning to build over, I don't know, over the lake or close to the lake, to make it like a residential area.
mm.
But of course, when they mention it, they have no recollection or no indication or no note of what this city once was and where it
Mm,
rests now.
mm.
And it's that's what they're doing. They're trying to erase history. They're trying to erase Black history.
Oh yeah,
So,
because that makes their children feel bad if they tell the
right,
true story. That's what they're saying. We don't, why should we make our children feel uncomfortable about? Well, what do you think our children did or we did
exactly,
coming through the system, you know?
exactly. The conversations that we have to have, unfortunately, start younger with our kids than
Mm,
with their
mm,
kids. And I saw somewhere and it was like a meme or something, and it said, well, if my child can experience this, then your child
right,
can experience it.
right.
Maybe not in the same, breath or idea, but the concept of it, because that's that's the only way that, and not even for me to say, oh, I'm sorry for what my parents and my grandparents and my great great grand. Because listen, Ruby Bridges is still alive. I'm gonna just put
That's right.
that
That's
that it
right.
wasn't that far back.
Think
She's still
about it.
alive.
If she's still alive, that lets you know that was in recent years that
Right.
this went on. And in some places, I mean, I just turned on the TV the other morning, and one of the women's basketball college basketball teams was somewhere Midwest or wherever they were, and people were harassing them driving
Right.
through. You know, racial slurs being thrown at the women, and they were
Mhm.
doing crazy stuff, and they felt threatened.
Right. But
You
see, we
know.
can't feel threatened because we're too tough to be threatened. So our feelings and all of that, they'll rationalize as to why we didn't feel threatened. And so that's a narrative that we have to constantly combat, especially as women. And when you mention about, we have to think about our narrative, how we want to show up in these moments. If we were put into civil rights, in the civil rights movement era, what would that be? And so that is literally where I am right now.
Yes. Yes.
Where I am of that age that I need to figure it out, because what I see on TV, what I experience, it's disheartening. And so you either have that fight or flight, or
Right.
you want to run in and do whatever you need to do. So I've been watching a lot of documentaries, reading some books that are centered around that time period. Matter of fact, I'm working my way through the Shirley Chisholm movie that just came out.
Oh my goodness. I want to watch. I just haven't had time to sit and
Yeah.
watch it. And I loved Shirley Chisholm and Barbara Jordan,
Mm.
early Congresswomen. I've
Hmm.
read their books by autobiographies,
Okay.
and actually had an opportunity, a passing meeting when I was very young,
Mm.
and going to Brooklyn with my aunt and uncle. My sister and I would spend our summers there. This man that attended my aunt and uncle's church had a catering business, and he catered an event on the at the Brooklyn Public Library
Okay.
for Congresswoman Chisholm, and she, not because I was really young then, and I, yelled her name out or something. I was just so starstruck. And she looked over and she just said, nodded her head. She said, "Hey,
Oh,
baby,"
oh,
with her accent, and so
yes,
that was,
yes.
as she kept walking with her, all of her folks. Well, I could have fainted and fallen out and done a whole bunch of stuff. I was just so thrilled. But that's my story and encounter with Shirley Chisholm. Oh my God.
Yeah, and that's why I'm working through it. I'm like, okay, I watch like 10, 15 minutes and I gotta go run and do something else. So I'm taking my time and I'm like I said, I'm reading and trying to catch up. I'm even reading Driving the Green Book.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fun, and I'm gonna take you off topic for a second. I tested a couple of people in my family, and I'm like, let me ask you a question. Did you ever have to get up early in the morning to get on the road? And they would say yes. Did you ever have to pack, a lunch or a meal? They would say yes. Did you ever have to, use the restroom before you leave because we're not going to
Hmm.
the restroom? And it was like my life was flashing before my eyes, but it was never explained to me as to why.
Mm.
And so this is where I'm gaining that knowledge of my people and the things that, because I'm a 79 baby.
Mm-hmm.
So there was still racism, but not to the extent to some of the things that my parents had to go through. And so they just did it for their safety. My parents, gave us some of those things, but I just thought it was a nuisance. I was like, I want to go to Burger King. I want to go to, I want to go to this place,
But it became habit, even when you
right.
could. I mean, my parents, you would have thought we weren't going to pass by any restaurant or any fast food place when they took me to college. I mean, I remember waking up that
Mm,
morning, my mom doing her thing that she would always do for road trips, in there frying ham and for to make her ham
mm-hmm,
biscuits and
mm-hmm.
packing sodas or whatever in the car. Is if and trust me, it was only a 2 hour drive up the road, Jada, from where I lived, 2.5 hours at the most. But because they grew up in the time, to your point, you couldn't just stop and eat anywhere or go to the restroom or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, no, and so it
Mhm.
just it amazes me. So tying it back into community outreach and social justice, there were people, you know, fighting for the cause and trying to maintain, their safety, but at the same time fight for the
Right.
injustices that are happening. And I'm like, that's powerful. It makes you think that as I sit here today in a house, wherever I chose to be in a house, or have the freedom to have school choice with my kids and all of these
Mm-hmm.
different things,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, wow, they set the tone. They even sacrificed themselves, quite
So
honestly,
much.
to be those fighters. And so now it's our time. It's the
And
young.
it's our time to do just that. I mean, I was
Exactly.
reading, and I follow what's going on at the King Center. I'm on their
I do
email
too.
list.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And something came out because it was so ironic. Dexter
Mm.
was he died, I
Yep.
think it was on his mom, the day that was her birthday, I think it was,
I
or no,
know.
it was his birthday, and she died on his birthday. That's how it was.
Mm.
Because he had just died a few days before, or the funeral, whenever it was, a few days before he would have had his birthday this year. And I remember Bernice posted something, sunrise, sunset, and it was she was acknowledging that it was Dexter's birthday, and in his passing, and then that her mother had died the year that she died. It was on his birthday that year.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm just like, can you imagine every birthday for him after that, he was reminded that
Right.
that's when his mom died. So that didn't register with me. I just remember my sons were young and they were in school in DeKalb County,
Okay.
and New Birth Missionary Church was where her funeral was. And because he had multiple dignitaries, several presidents, current and former, were at Miss King's funeral, they closed all the schools in DeKalb County
Mm.
because the buses and all the routes would have had to be rerouted, changed, and different things would have happened. So they just didn't have school that day. And my boys didn't understand why I made, because the funeral was televised. I said,
Okay.
this is history. You're gonna sit here. I don't
Right.
care if you have the day off. When this funeral comes on, you're gonna sit here and watch every minute of it. You
Right.
know, but what took me back to that day, I read something, the strength of Coretta Scott King after Dr. King was murdered. We
Yes.
didn't talk a lot about her
Hmm.
going 4 days
Mm.
after he was murdered. April 8th, she took three of her children, because Bernice was so little, but the
Hmm.
three older ones went back to Memphis and finished that march.
That's right.
40
That's
something
right.
thousand people marched with her that day. And she, what kind of courage did this woman have? Her husband had been shot in cold blood. How did she know, or not be afraid that, she was, but she
That couldn't.
had
Mm-hmm.
to do this. The
Mm-hmm.
strength of Black women and
Mm-hmm.
mothers, that right there, if that doesn't speak to who we are,
Right.
when our backs are up against the wall, she had lost her helpmate
Yes.
and the father of her children,
Yes.
and she regrouped somehow, and dug deep to in her faith, because that's the only thing that carried her down those streets of Memphis that day.
Yes, sir.
You
Right.
know, I mean, she was still, I
Right.
mean, my God, in shock. 4 days, but she
I
did that.
no, and I agree. And I'm while you're talking, I'm sitting here looking for this title of a book that um in the process she was writing and someone was doing the transcribing of the book because oftentimes, and we focus on Dr. King
That's right.
and we assume that she's just there to be cute and do the cutesy things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Be the
And
arm candy.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
and I come to find out that she has her own activism that was running through her blood, and how she would use her time and her talents and her ability to um, motivate and encourage people to go one way or the other. It even talked about her journey into having the King Center.
That's right. She fought for
And
that.
yeah,
Yes, and the holiday.
right,
And the holiday. She was
right.
she was very instrumental in not letting them put that on the back burner.
Right. And so to your point, it is something that and it's not to to emulate in the sense of copy or envy or anything like that. But when I read that book, that's where it kind of said, okay, maybe I could do this.
Yes.
Um, because she was a worker bee, she was a busy bee, sometimes in the
Mm-hmm.
front and behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
But she had one thing in mind, and that was community and social justice.
That's right.
And the amount of let me say it this way, the loop that it can put you in if you get into the weeds of the fear,
Mm.
hesitation, and the woulda, coulda, shouldas.
Mm-hmm.
What if, these are my babies? I can't be out here doing all of this stuff, and what about them? But it's her faith that, and I have to find it later, the title of the book, but it was her faith that carried her through, because even in that book it also mentioned she had been, prior to Oprah buying her that condo,
Yes, in
still
Atlanta.
living in the
Mm-hmm.
home, and it was burglarized. And so
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
she was still living in that community, even when the community had changed.
Mm-mm.
And but she just stayed true to who she is, and she knew who God called her to be.
And
And
all those women in the movement, I mean, I
yeah.
can't wait to read Joy Reid's book about Myrlie Evers, as
Mm,
well, and
yeah,
her
yeah.
husband as well. But Dr. Evelyn Lowry, she doesn't get a whole lot of credit either,
Oh,
being Reverend Joseph Lowry's helpmate. But she was the one who started the women's arm of SCLC.
oh,
Yeah, she started that, and it's, as far
yeah,
as I know, it's still going strong. I
it
mean,
is.
she, yeah, but she's, SCLC, of course, were the ministers and folks, but there across the South and particularly in Atlanta. But she,
Mm-hmm.
I guess the women were there anyway. I guess she said we can, and so their targeted areas of concentration for the organization was to address issues impacting women and children,
Right.
because they saw that when they were out there in the movement, in the communities, on the streets of these small rural towns, and who only knows what all they saw, the impoverished
Right.
families, and just most of them had Southern roots anyway. I mean,
Hmm.
Alabama, Georgia,
Right.
Mississippi. I mean, so they grew up in it.
Hmm. And it's so amazing to hear that they come from the rural cities. I believe
Mm-hmm.
Miss Coretta Scott King, she came from Alabama, and
Uh-huh.
I can't think of
Mm-hmm.
the city, but it was a really small city, and but she took the charge and she ran with it, and it's in those moments, and we'll begin to wrap up, but it's in those moments where, as I begin to create my own narrative as to how and what I do to affect community outreach and social justice, that I want to ask, how do you feel, or even yourself, because you're out there now, you're out there engaging and connecting and bridging the gaps. How are you building that courage or encouraging yourself when you're up against potential opposition, or you probably already experienced the opposition? How do you keep moving forward without letting that fear or self-doubt come into play?
Prayer
Mhm.
and my way of showing my gratitude for those that came before us. That
Mhm.
conversation that I had with John Lewis, he spoke at A&T's commencement one year, Congressman John Lewis, and um, we were in the green room area before we processed in, and I was thanking him for all that he had done, and so I told him about my history of being student government president, and I had done some marching in my days and was trying to do some things. And he said, "So are you still getting into good trouble?" And and I said, "Yes, sir." I sort of chuckle. I said, "Yes, sir, I am." And but then I could see the seriousness in his face. So, I got serious as well. And we exchanged a couple of the comments, and he said, "Okay." He said, "So that's how you really thank us.
Mm,
You stay in good trouble. That's how you really thank the
that's
ones
the
that
word
came
right
before."
there.
Now think about that. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it's not just to revel in it and sit back and enjoy the fine things of life and go on about our way. You got to stay in good trouble. You have to, and I see that as my role to do that. And what do people say? Service is the rent you pay
Mm,
for the right to be here and to
right.
have the privileges that you have. You should be of service
Right.
and try to leave this world a better place than what you found it. And I take that to heart. And so I think that if I'm doing that and trying my best to stay in God's will, because I do pray and I don't want to just get out there willy-nilly doing just anything,
Hmm.
just because I'm angry. Because oh my God, it's so easy to be angry and act out. But
Yes.
you want to be productive. You can have righteous indignation
Hmm.
and still have a path that will get you where you need to go. There's nothing wrong with that. But you just can't just go out and just act a fool is all I should say. And many times, though, Jada, I've been close. I've been close to going there.
And
But thank God for Jesus, as people
what?
say. Thank
Listen,
God for Jesus.
every day, because
Every
that's
day.
where
Thank Him.
I am sometimes, where um the frustration, like, why do they not see this? Why do they not see
Right.
the lie? Why are they
Right.
trying to spin this narrative? I see it, so I know somebody else see it, so I need, and then I have to
Mm-hmm.
pause and say, okay, would that benefit the
Mm-hmm.
overall, movement, by me just going out there and just yelling and, what is it, the chicken with the head cut off, just,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or do I need to be strategic?
Right.
Need to
Right.
organize? Do I need to galvanize the people
Mm-hmm.
so that there's more numbers,
And
which
there's power
creates
in
greater
that.
power? Exactly. It creates greater power. So
Mm-hmm.
I am, and it's so funny, I have my father's blood And we are very hot-tempered people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's another reason why I would tend to sit in the background.
Mm-hmm.
But now I believe God is pushing me further and further to the front to do his will. But with that comes responsibility. And sometimes I don't want the responsibility. I just want
I
to go
hear you.
and
I know. I
do.
know.
So I think it's important, as we begin to wrap up, I think it's important to connect with individuals, not necessarily on the same path, but have the same mindset, the like-minded
Mm-hmm.
as far as community and social justice. Because as you mentioned, Jesus, he came down to serve.
Yes, he did.
And so that is our role, to serve and be there for our community and make sure that they have what they need. And I mean community overall, not just the Black community, but definitely at home, Black community
Mm-hmm.
in general. It has to be something that we are adamant about, because otherwise, come November 5th, we
Yes,
are going
ma'am.
to be in some huge trouble. So it's getting out and having those conversations. I did find the book. It is called
Okay.
My Life, My Love, My Legacy,
Oh, yes.
Coretta
Yes.
Scott King, and it's
Mm-hmm.
told to Reverend Dr. Barbara Reynolds. So that's the book. But it took from the beginning to meeting Dr. Martin Luther King to after his passing and everything that she did, and even the relationship, the friendship that she developed with um, Sister Shabazz and
Mm-hmm.
Sister Evers. Like out of death, they built a relationship, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a bittersweet situation, but they felt like they were the only three that could relate to each other because of what they've been through.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's just this is the beginning of conversation. Community outreach is always important. Social justice is always important. God talks about it in the Bible. Jesus was a representation of it in the Bible, and even now. And so we have to begin to change our mindsets and keep the conversation going. So,
Well, one of my favorite, this is a good way to end it tonight. One of my favorite quotes from Sojourner Truth, and I've used it when I've talked to several women's groups or young women when I was still involved with the university, where she said, if the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all alone, these women together ought to be able to turn it right side up again.
amen.
And that just, and that's what it's going to take. The men have had their turn at this thing, and so we're saying, give us just a little room to make our way and do what we need to do, and then when you do that, realize that we can help. We're not trying to take over or to do
Right.
anything. We're just saying there is a place for us in all of this and wherever we are, in whatever setting, but we have a purpose, and I truly believe that that time is now.
Absolutely. I believe that's as
Hmm.
well. I think it's an opportunity for us to show just that,
Right.
to connect the dots and do what we always do, and that's multitask. So, did you enjoy the discussion with Pam? She is wonderful. She is dedicated. She is an activist. I just love having the conversations with her as well as picking her brain. And so, as we go into our takeaways, these are the same takeaways from last week, but I think they are appropriate in the extension of the conversation here in part two, which is number one, empowered leadership. Black Christian women play a pivotal role in driving community outreach and social justice efforts. Their unique perspectives, rooted in faith and lived experiences, offer invaluable insights for addressing systemic inequalities and fostering meaningful change within communities. Number two, holistic approach. Black Christian women approach community outreach and social justice with a holistic lens, recognizing the interconnectedness of spiritual, social, and cultural dimensions. By integrating faith based principles with grassroots activism. They are able to create more comprehensive and sustainable solutions to address pressing societal issues. Call to actions. Number 1, amplify Black Christian women voices. Center and uplift the voices of Black Christian women in conversations and in decision-making processes related to community outreach and social justice. Provide platforms for them to share their perspectives and experiences and solutions to address systemic inequalities. Now, this is not to say that we don't uplift and promote our male counterparts, but oftentimes the amplification of Black women voices is not necessarily heard or celebrated. So we want to hone in. This is the Heavenly Threads of Heritage, where we focus on Black Christian women, and I'm going to do just that. Support Black Christian women-led initiatives. Invest time, resources, and support into initiatives led by Black Christian women that focus on community outreach and social justice. This could involve volunteering, donating, or collaborating with organizations and ministries that are actively working towards creating positive change in marginalized communities. One thing I would like to add is that you've probably heard these takeaways and call to actions before, but I think, as I stated previously, it is consistent with the narrative of this podcast, where we are highlighting Black Christian women, but we are all inclusive of Black women in the overall community, not to uh, present contention or frustration with our Black brothers, our brown and Black community, the overall Christian community. No, but it is a recognition of Black Christian women. And so a lot of these takeaways and calls to actions that you're receiving are consistent. And I want us to really start taking them in and digesting them, and even letting them, rest in your heart and talk it over with the Lord and see what it is that you are to do as far as your calling and assignment. Amen. All right. So after this, there will be some music, and then we're going to our announcements, our church announcements, and then we'll wrap it up. But I thank you, as always, for tuning in. Attention, all Black churches, civic organizations, and social justice advocates in our vibrant community. In our collective pursuit of fostering a more inclusive, empowered, and united community, we're extending a special invitation for you to share your upcoming events and activities across the United States with us. Your contributions play a vital role in driving positive change and building a brighter future for all. Here's how you can participate. We warmly invite all Black churches, civic organizations, and social justice groups to submit details of your upcoming activities and events using the Google form provided. Please ensure that submissions are made at least 7 days in advance of the event date. When submitting, please include essential details such as the date, time, location, a brief description of the event, and a contact person with their email address and/or phone number. This allows us to accurately promote your event to the community. Once we've gathered all submissions, we'll amplify your voices by sharing the information through various channels. Together, we can raise awareness, inspire action, and make a meaningful impact. Just know, by participating, you're not only promoting your activities, but also contributing to a collective effort to advance civic engagement, social justice, and community empowerment within the Black community. To submit your event, please use the Google form link provided. Please allow 2 to 3 business days for a response. Thank you for your dedication and commitment to making a difference in our community. Together, let's continue to uplift, support, and empower one another on our journey towards justice and equality. For questions, please email jlrdixon@gmail.com or text 904-339-5725. Again, please allow 2 to 3 business days for a response. In solidarity and with profound gratitude, Community Empowerment Team. As we continue to weave this tapestry together, share your story. We want to hear from you. Share your testimonies of faith and resilience. You could be featured in an upcoming episode, inspiring others on their journey. Visit any one of our social media platforms to complete the form to submit your story. Connect with community. Join our community discussions and engage with others who, like you, are on a journey of faith. Your insights might be the inspiration someone else needs. Support the podcast. If you found inspiration in tonight's episode, consider supporting Heavenly Threads of Heritage. Your contribution helps us continue amplifying these powerful stories. As we close, remember that your story matters and your journey is a part of the rich tapestry weaving us together. Thank you for being a vital part of the Heavenly Threads of Heritage family. Until next time, may your faith be your guiding light, and may you find inspiration in the remarkable stories of these incredible women.